we have done low poly portraits in the past. This is going to be a little different. We're going to do one that's based on an animal. We'll go ahead and create this web large. So go ahead and create that. Then find your animal. So I'm going to use this orangutan here. So I'll just slide that in and I'll shrink this down to size. Now, if you are aware, if you recall, there are basically 3 parts to creating your low poly portrait. Now, for this one, we're going to do things a little differently than we might have done last year. First off, let's go ahead and lock this layer, and let's make a new layer. And let's come up with, say, let's use your pen tool, and let's come up with, say, a stroke that we think will show up well. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to zoom in some, and I'm just going to kind of start from the top and work my way down. I might actually not do that. I might actually start from the middle here. I tell you, it doesn't matter, because for the low poly portrait, in this case, what we're going to be doing, instead of, say, for instance, just doing polygons, we're going to choose a polygon. And my polygon for this one is going to be a triangle. I want every single one of my polygons to be a triangle. So I'm not going to use anything else besides a triangle. I'm not going to use any quadrangles. I'm not going to use any pentagons or any hexagons. I'm just going to do a triangle. So the way we're going to do this is by using the pen tool, and we're going to start off with no fill and a stroke that's going to be very visible. In this case, I'm going to choose lime green. So just to kind of like, start us off, I'm going to start here. I'm just going to this little shadowy area here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll be that. I'll put my stroke up just a little bit so I can see it better. And then control click off, and then hover over it so it snaps to it, right? And then once again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then from there, you just kind of keep adding in your triangles. So I'm going to speed this up. And the idea here is that you're just going to try to like match the planes of the face using only triangles. Don't use anything more complicated than a triangle. And try to stick to one single color the whole time. So see what I'm doing? And I'm going to try to get some big broad triangles here at the top on this monkey's face, so this ape's face here, and try to kind of follow along with the planes of the face. And you can match it up to the actual side that you want, or you can just take it corner by corner. You can see right here, I'm just going to pull this in. But the point is that you're going to start off with some, okay, now see right here, this is interesting. I'm going to take a look at this little point that I made right here. So this guy right here, I'd actually close this out. So let me go ahead and just kind of get rid of this. You want to make sure that you're closing out your shapes. So for instance here, I close out my shape. 1, 2, 3, 4. This little circle appears. I close it out. Make sure that's closed out before you move on. So just double check that you're closing in all your shapes. So you're going to have broad shapes up here, and then when you get in close, you're going to have real tiny shapes to get in close to like the area around the eyes and stuff. So the eyes, you always got to make sure your eyes look good, right? So your eyes should be pretty exact looking when it comes down to it. So like I said, I'm going to speed this up, and then we're going to go to the next. So the first step is draw your polygons. Draw all the polygons for your drawing. Okay, let's go. Okay, so that's step one done. Step one was creating all of your polygons. Like I said before, you want to limit it to just triangles. Keep the triangles going in similar directions, making sure they're following the planes of the face. Even if they're not exactly following the planes of the face, that's okay. But as you can see, I've got tiny triangles by his eyes and his nose and the different areas where his like sort of geometry, as it were, or she, I don't know if this is a boy orangutan or a girl orangutan, can't tell the difference. But anyways, these broad areas have big broad triangles, and these like kind of areas where the texture changes and I want to find little definition and stuff, I have tiny triangles. That's the basic simple part of it all. The second step, so this is step one of, we'll say, 4, is going to be going through and sampling the colors, right? So all you're doing is going back and forth between hitting the V on the keyboard and then hitting I on the keyboard. You choose V on the keyboard to select your triangle, and then I on the keyboard to click inside of it and sample the colors, right? So V on the keyboard, I on the keyboard, V on the keyboard, I on the keyboard. Now notice it's easy, for instance, right here, to get like the same color. You want to vary the color a little bit. So make sure the color varies slightly between all the adjacent triangles, all the adjacent things. So go through and just, I would start from the top and work your way through. And then as you're going through, just kind of notice like what is happening and just making sure that all the colors kind of make sense in terms of where they're at. If, for instance, there's all manner of like random pixels that can kind of interfere with this, so be sure that you're being careful about this. Now there might be moments here or there where, for instance, like this right here, it looks as if I am having a hard time picking this one triangle right here, so I click on that and I got that. So you may need to zoom in some, but that's the next step. So I'm going to speed this up and we'll get to the third step here in just a second. The first step was drawing the triangles, the second step was filling them in, and so now we're at the third step. The third step is where we go over here to our layers menu and we unlock our base layer. We go ahead and get rid of it, and we see that we've got some white space in between some of our shapes. Now, you may have noticed that as I was moving, trying to select these, I was moving some of these shapes around just so I could sort of access the different shapes, because, you know, as you layer them through, they kind of rise and fall and stuff. So there's some things, if I go over here, for instance, there's some white space between these two, and if I get closer you can see more, you know, spaces. But for instance, I can move this one back. Now this is going to be important right here. You're going to want to go over here to view and uncheck snap to pixel, so you can kind of move these a little more freely. But say for instance this right here, so I want to make sure this meets up, so I'm going to get my direct select tool and I'm just going to click once on this corner and just drag it over until it snaps to that point over there. So same thing over here. I need to clear up all these little spaces here. So this triangle seems like it's the offending polygon. So I'll just drag this down a little bit, then drag it back up to where it meets. Same deal here. I click once on this, drag it away, drag it back up until it snaps into place. And then same thing over here. I'll click on this one, click on this point, drag it away, drag it up close until it snaps, and then kind of look back and examine it. Okay, I don't see any white spaces here. Okay, so the next thing you're going to be doing is going through, just like with a fine-tooth comb, just do a little grid, and get rid of all the little spaces of white by using your direct select tool to click once and then kind of move it away and then snap it into place wherever it needs to go. So same thing here, just pull it away, snap it into place, right? This right here looks like it needs to be, once again, click once to activate it, pull it away, snap it back into place. So we're done with step 3. Once again, step 1, draw the polygons. Step 2, fill them in. Step 3, very important, close the gaps between the polygons. Now here's the thing you want to avoid. Let me just show you something real quick. Say for instance we've got this little guy right here. You see this? This is okay because it's small, it's tiny, but there's a chance, say for like, okay, so there's a gap here, I can just drag this over here and I'll cover that up, right? That's fine, right? Well, I mean, it's not like breaking some kind of like ancient rule, but to my mind, it's breaking kind of the pattern. And we talked about the Gestalt principles of grouping. We have sort of common fate. We have these laws of common fate, these laws of like predictability. When things don't act as predicted, people start to notice them, right? And so if you've got just a bunch of triangles kind of scattered about, and then you jump into it and there's this one crazy thing that's like doesn't make sense, then suddenly it doesn't make sense. Another thing that I'm noticing is this little triangle right here that's really shiny and bright. I'm going to see if I can't take a look at that. I'm going to go over here to my properties and I'm going to get that fill taken away. And so I'm going to see if I can't maybe make this a little less noticeable. Let's take a look at this right here. That's a bit better. I like that. Okay, cool. All right, so step 4, the final step, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this guy one more time, is to add a background to this. We'll call this step 4, and maybe we can call this step 4A, but let's go ahead and get our, make a new layer here, and we'll just make a rectangle. It doesn't matter how big it is, as long as it's bigger than the artboard, or at least as big as the artboard. And let's go to our fill. Let's add ourselves a gradient here. So I'll put myself a gradient. And you can do a radial gradient or you can do a linear gradient. Doesn't matter. so long as you do gradient options here, and then you think to yourself, like, okay, what kind of colors do we want? Again, I would suggest going to one of our random color picker things like color.adobe.com is another good one here. Okay, and I'll just go to explore and look around for something. You might even search for something. How about like jungle? So you can kind of look around and see something that you might like here. Kind of like this little flamingo thing. So I might click on this and just copy this and add this to one of my stops, and then go over here and maybe grab this guy and copy this and add it to another one of my stops. And if you wanted to add another stop, you can click anywhere in between here and maybe add a different one. Say, for instance, you want to add this guy in between it. So you could, or if you wanted to say, for instance, kind of like, oops, let me just try that. Maybe you wanted to, like, put them like this instead. Pink, blue, dark blue, and you could shift the angle in a variety of ways. 90, okay, here. Okay, and so you can kind of take a look at that, right? And once you got that done, just drag that down and put that where you want it to go, right there. Okay, so there's that. And when you export this for screens, essentially what you're going to be doing is exporting it to within the bounds of the artboard. Why I was made a point to make sure all the polygons went past the artboard as many times as they could. So let me just lock this real quick. And I'm just going to double check that these guys are there. You can just select, you drag select with the direct select tool and just drag these down to make sure they go past the artboard. So I'm going to try to make sure there's no gaps coming through from like the other from this artboard here. So everything's going to go straight through. Same thing up here. All this stuff is kind of going through. So when we export for screens, there won't be any just random spaces where the gradient shows through on the edge of our design. So just purposeful placement of these various things, all that stuff is important. I think it should be good. All right, so I'm not sure if I enjoy this gradient all that much. I might do something to it later. I could even just like add a new thing on top of it here. I could just grab this and just put something on top of it and maybe call it like, make it just nothing but white, and just pull the opacity down, say for like 10% or so. That's one thing you could do. Okay, so we're gonna call this one done. But if you don't want to go any further, that's fine. But we're gonna have a step 4B, maybe even step 5 here in just a second. So I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna export this. And we're going to open up Photoshop for step 5. Okay, so with Photoshop open, let's go ahead and export this file here. I'll just go to File, Export for Screens, and make sure we got this set for JPEG. And if you want to bump it up in terms of its quality, say for instance 2x or 3x, that's something you can do. And just call it low poly animal, whatever you got going on there. And export it, and it's going to pop up in its folder here. And so when you pop open that guy right there, you're going to see you got low poly animal right there. And let's just go ahead and drag it on into Photoshop. Okay, so I'm looking around here. I'm not seeing anything that I don't necessarily like. I think this is kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my layers that can stay locked or whatever. And we can just go to our, or unlock it, whatever. We can go to, say, for instance, adding a gradient map to it. And we can add, say, for instance, I don't know, something like this guy here. And pull the fill down, maybe change it to multiply. Pull the fill down a good deal. Okay, or even like color burn or something. Pull the fill down even more, like 5% or something. And, or maybe just back to multiply, I don't know, or normal, that's fine, And you can think about, like, how does this look compared to the two. Let's pull up a little bit more, just so I can see something different. You could even do the whole, Control Alt Shift E and take that, and then maybe let's add a new duplicate it here. Control J to duplicate it, And from there, go to your filter and your camera raw filter, and you can sort of mess about with the contrast and things like that. Pull the temperature, down, cool it off if you wanted to. I mean, pull a little more green in there. Pull the exposure up, brighten it up. Pull the contrast up a little bit. Highlights, shadows, all these things that you do to your photos, you can do to your drawings. And who's to say you can't add a little vibrance or some saturation to it and stuff like that. All those things, things that you can kind of like think about putting in there, and you can just sort of like alt click on this to sort of compare the two. I kind of like, this is the original right here, and this is my additions and stuff. And then I think all this will be better too with, like, say for instance a vignette or something. So I'll go to my filter, camera raw filter, and I'll just go back to my vignette, and I'll just add another vignette here. So I'll just get my lens correction and vignette a little bit on the corners. Maybe a good deal on the corners here. There we go, like that. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll add a little grunge to it. So I'll just file, place, embedded, and it should open up to my little grunge things I've got. Let's think here. There we go. We got that hanging out there. That's all covered this up. How do we do on this? Where's our bounding box? There we go. We kind of pull this down some just to kind of get this all there. And we can change this to, like, say for instance, screen. And even pull down the opacity some, or maybe even overlay, and kind of get that there. And we could even put a little layer mask on that and kind of mask out parts of it here or there. So let's get that. And we can put a little layer mask on there and just get our brush tool. Just kind of brushing out some of the texture here or there. All right, cool. And so, the world's your oyster when it comes to doing some of the same things you've done before with your edits. But yeah, okay, cool. I mean, hey, Control Shift, I don't know, just go to filter and generate or render rather, filter render, and I don't know, let's put a little lens flare in there. Why not? Just put that guy right there. Just kind of have him be just blazing next to the monkey, and hey, whatever, world's your oyster. Do it to it. Right? Okay, there you go. Okay, so that's step 5 or step 4B. So there you go. Back doing what we've done before, but doing it better because we've done this before and we're more advanced. All right, cool. Can't wait to see you guys producing in class.